I'm assuming you clicked on this video because you want to learn how to color properly. Welcome! You are at the right video. I know that most of you guys who watches my video probably have drawings that look dry and crusty. This is your sign to improve your dry, crusty, dead colorings. Alright, be ready for your brain to get fried. First of all, on how to color properly, we're gonna start off with your classic circle. Tip number 1 is that noob artists don't use the hue to their advantage. As I select each color from the circle on the right, you can see the colors of the circle has no change in the hue. And what it does, it will appear as dull and dead. We don't want that. Okay, so on the screen here, you see the color wheel. So this circle bar that wraps around the square is called the hue, and it's where you can change your color whether you want it red, green, blue, yellow, purple, etc. By moving the dot in the square up or down like this, you are changing the value of the color. And if we move it from side to side like this, you're changing the amount of saturation. Now, if we compare this dead circle to this one, you can see just by shifting the hue even a little bit, you're incorporating more range of colors and overall makes your colors more appealing and more alive. Okay, so you may be wondering what this random lighter color is doing here. Well, this random color is called the reflected light, or in our terms, the bounce light. Basically, the reason this exists is that light bounces off everything. So by adding the bounce light to your object, it makes it more three-dimensional. And no one likes flat art. For example, I talked about this in my previous video. You should definitely check it out. I talked about how adding bounce light to your character can make them feel more immersed with the background. In this piece, you can see on the character, I used a bit of blue and a bit of pinkish orange on the person. Imagine if I didn't add this in, it looks like I just copied and pasted a person on the background. So, instead, here's a little tip for my art noobs. Just imagine your character in the environment and having your light source. Think about their surroundings, like if they're up against a wall, the amount of reflected light would be intense compared to if the light is bouncing off from the ground and there weren't any wall there. So let's start off with a sketch. I like to use a lasso tool and go around my sketch like this. Then you can select any color you like. I usually like to use a grey tone for my base color. To enhance my sketch more, you want to duplicate it first. Go to this, and you want to do a subtle amount of blur like this. Then you want to reduce the opacity. We want to clear out this area. Since we blur the sketch, it usually will look like this, and we want it crisp. So go to your base color that we did previously, and by holding the Control key, click on this layer in the visible square area. Select Ctrl-Shift-I to invert your selection. Then you go back to the blur layer and delete the outside area. So I just merged these two together and changed the layer to multiply. Okay, so when it comes to coloring, I usually start off with coloring the base color of everything on a different layer. For the skin, on a new layer, the hair on a new layer, and the clothes in a separate layer. Something like that. Okay, this is really crucial, and so the amount of saturation that you use can affect the outcome and how you want your art to be interpreted. So for the color of the hair, I decided to go around this area in the color wheel. It is more towards the saturated side. The overall appearance is more bold and strong. Now, compared to this one that I did earlier, we can see this is way towards the desaturated side, overall giving a softer appearance. So make sure you keep in mind of the amount of saturation that you want to use. Okay, now back to doing the skin. Firstly, you want to copy this diagram that I found on the internet. Don't forget to do this only subtly. Don't blast out the colors. Once you've done that, bring out your standard airbrush and add blush on the nose, the eyes, the cheeks, and lastly, the ears. So basically, these are the areas where blood circulates the most out of the face, like visibly to the human eye. And these areas has barely any. So let's start on the eyes, because why not? Now, noob artists usually use white, and that's wrong. What you want to do is choose a creamier grayish white like this. I'm just going to add a deep purple color shade over here like this for the shadows. Now back to skin. So this kind of depends where your light source is, but since my light source is pointing down on her head, these shadows are going to appear over here. Now I'm just going to draw this. So right now it looks meh, so we're just going to add a third color. I use a saturated orange for the third transition. Now here's before and after. Alright, now it looks pretty decent right now. So for the hair, you want to click the layer and make a gradient. Start with the deeper shade at the bottom, and at the top would be a lighter shade. For the light source, I'm just going to use a coolish bluish color. So this gives an illusion that she is in an environment that's nighttime. Honestly, I think a lot of people overcomplicate this step. What you want to do is, then you want to grab your darker shade and shade the tips of the hair. Shade the tips at the bottom and the top. So we're just going to rinse and repeat with the other pieces. Okay, here are the results. Now for this one, I think it's more of a preferred style, but usually in the darkest area of the hair, like around these two, and I like to add an opposite color that stands out, and just experiment with things. I know a lot of artists despise the color green, but you know, this looks pretty decent. So for the highlights of the hair, I like to follow in the direction of a circle, like this. Then I grab a darker shade and go around it like this. Now let's add a little blending between the two. Since the light source is pointing down, I'm gonna add the shadows and the third color for transition. I'm just gonna add a few more details around here. And I'm just gonna add a third transition color over here to the hair. By doing this, you're incorporating more colors to your art, and it just makes it look much more appealing to the eye. You can go on a new layer, and you want to select your airbrush and select your skin color and just lightly airbrush it on the face, or like on the hair that is closest to the face. Okay, for the last section of the video, I'm not gonna do much talking, just a little commentary on each section of the drawing of how you can use these tips and tricks on a real drawing, unlike a simplified style that I did previously. So I really suck at hands, so I'm just using a 3D model, and I highly recommend beginner artists to use it. Almost like, no, it is a cheat code for beginner artists. Now, your art can look really stunning with these detailed hands that you totally drew. Congrats to those who made it at the end of the video. So here is the speed time of it. Now, so
You learned how to properly color by using the hue to your advantage, producing art that does not look flat. You also learned what bounce light is, why it curves in 3D shapes, how to make your art more 3D, and different coloring styles.
So guys, hopefully you guys learned a heck ton of information and your brain got fried. The next time when you draw, you'll definitely level up. Yeah, and see you guys in the next video, maybe in a week or two, depends. Okay, bye!